Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. T. Sai Chandramouli, former Associate Professor of English, Railway College, Usmania University, Hyderabad. This module, William Blake and his poetry, has been contributed by me. In this module, let us discuss the craftsmanship of William Blake as a poet and significance of his poetry that has enriched English literature in general. He represents the spirit of his age. He represents essential and salient factors associated with the 19th century literary scenario. William Blake's work finds a place beside Picasso's in Tater Gallery in London. This just reflects the magnificence of his work. He was an engraver, poet, artist, and he has drawn his poems on sheets of copper with the floral designs forming the frames of the poems and distributed them to his friends. He was born on 28th November 1757. He married Catherine Boucher in the year 1782, and he departed on 12th of August in the year 1827. The Bible was the chief inspiration for him in his life, and it has left an indelible mark and impact on his works and life. To start with, let's discuss the poems carried by the collection called Songs of Innocence. Blake's lyrical poems are remarkable for condensed expression. We may call them epigrammatic expression without any complexities or complex use of complex sentences. He doesn't use too many figures of speech, but resorts to alliteration here and there. As is believed, a number of his poems are embellished by the illustrations he has carved on the plates of copper. Thus, it's difficult to say whether the carvings added luster to the poems or the content lent brilliance to the pictures drawn by him on the copper plates. It's quite possible that not many people may be knowing the symbolic significance and artistic value of the copper plates on which his poems were crafted or engraved, and they might have been disposed of as a material of no use at all. So sad. There's a symbolic design on the title page of Song of Innocence, in addition to the year of publication 1789. There is an apple plant with the two children playing underneath, and there's a mother reading a book. Perhaps she is telling a story to the children. The children's innocence, joy are splendidly conveyed in this portrait. The Songs of Innocence, along with the illustrations, formed a fascinating fusion of ideas and meaning. Great visual and literary appeal makes these poems and collections a remarkable work by any poet in any age. Not all poets could resort to this form of composing poems and sharing them with friends and admirers. A unique way of visualized images, transferring them onto the copper plates, is an innovative technique developed by William Blake and Blake alone. In most of these poems, the identity of God and child are perceptible. Here, God is viewed as a child. In some instances, he is also viewed as Jesus the babe. This poem introduction throws light on the content and the themes of the poems we do come across in this section. Children's joy, and then what makes a child cheerful are delineated candidly in a vivid manner. This poem throws light on the tone of the group of poems in this collection titled Songs of Innocence as a whole. The picture depicts a piper looking at a child in the cloud. This poem celebrates happiness and joy in childhood days. Piper and pipe refer to musical rhymes of the poem. There is a progression from inspiration, music, and composition to writing the poem. In this poem, William Blake declares what impelled him to write the Songs of Innocence. The poem gives evidence of sustained simplicity, though there are a few complex sentences here and there. It's free from ornamental figures of speech, but one can perceive or notice alliterations here and there. The poet desires to point to the happy and innocent state of every child. He also wants to say how the materialistic world spoils beauty of childhood and the joy of children. The poet feels that the process of growing up in a way spoils simple joys of childhood, thus making the life of grown-up man miserable, and also how the society around tries to corrupt an innocent person. The lamb. Pastoral setting adds luster and lends beauty to this poem. Biblical symbolism of Jesus Christ as the lamb is unmistakable. Sing-song tune of the poem is perfectly in tune with the kind of message he wants to convey and also the content carried by the poem. Soft vowel sounds and repetition of the sound la are representative of the soft bleating of the lambs. This poem may be stated as the simplest of the poems one can come across in the works of William Blake. He sees a unity of all living creatures with nature and God, particularly Jesus Christ. The lamb has immense symbolic significance in his poetry. The lamb questions the child and the creator, and all the three look like the same, or they do represent the same symbol. Through this poem, though this poem looks simple, it's very difficult to understand since composing such poems require supreme craftsmanship. The shepherd. The picture of the shepherd with his flock under the shade of trees vivifies the pastoral setting chosen by the poet for this poem. The lamb in this poem has no explicit reference to Jesus Christ, though associations do linger. Shepherd with capitalization suggests God, the good shepherd for all people. There is a freshness of thought and symbols chosen in this poem. It is evocative but not obtrusive. And the poet wants to emphasize that with the trust in the master and the creator, one can lead a comfortable and simple life. Let's look at the poem, The Divine Image. Here the poet talks about the holy unity between man and God. This is the main theme of this poem. He talks about the four virtues associated with the divinity. And also, he talks about the image of divinity and suggests that he dwells in the hearts of all people. The quintessential qualities of divinity to be acquired by man are described in detail in this poem. Mercy is one of the virtues chosen to discuss quite often. Shakespeare eloquently extols the nobility of being merciful in the play The Merchant of Venice. Racial harmony is upheld because both the Jew and the Christian are human beings. Blake in this poem upholds racial harmony because divinity dwells in all human beings. In the poem titled Holy Thursday, we find the picture of children being led to the cathedral on Holy Thursday, also known as Ascension Day. Children are taken in a procession to the cathedral, and the poet uses the symbol of the flow of river. Pathetic plight of the poor children moves the poet, who declares that they are in fact angels of God. Blake makes a powerful plea to show compassion to these children. The play depicts children proceeding to the church and the angels in heaven. The poet's love and sympathy for the underprivileged children is perceptible in this beautiful poem. He firmly believes that the church and the clergy have ignored and have been indifferent to the children. In no uncertain terms, he castigates the London society and the clergyman in general. William Blake repeats the image of lambs and dwells on the innocence associated with the childhood. But it is not the same, it doesn't carry the same symbolic significance as has been done in the earlier poems. While children's faces are radiant on account of innocence and purity of mind and thought, the way they have been herded into the cathedral makes it a pathetic sight to view. Then, in contrast to the volume, Songs of Innocence, we do come across songs of experience carrying powerful castigation of the society by William Blake. The simple language of the earlier volume is no longer seen here. The poetic tone in Songs of Experience makes it totally different. His sensitive ears can comprehend the message and power of God. William Blake exhorts earth to wake up from a state of hibernation. His prophetic eye can foresee the daybreak and the end of transient darkness of the night. The themes and content in this set of poems are remarkable for their high seriousness, complexity in thought and expression, in addition to significant symbols employed. Blake's personal views about contemporary society and the church are laid bare unmistakably. The indifference of the clergy and indifference of the well-off in the society towards the suffering of the children in distress moves the poet to tears. In the poem Introduction, which is the first one in the series, the speaker's direct revelation carries authority of both divinity and experience. Sophistication marks expression and content in this poem and other poems in this section. The speaker urges fallen men to reclaim the world he lost in the starry pool of reason. William Blake tries to emphasize the need for man to return to his earlier position from a state of hibernation and dormancy. With the awareness of preeminence of God and impact of his will to prevail, Blake says that these alone and alone can redeem a fallen earth as well as fallen man. The speaker pleads with others too, as though they possess power to redeem themselves. I quote, O earth, return, arise from out the dewy grass. Night is worn, and the morn rises from the slumberous mass. The earth here represents fallen man, lying dormant and immobile. There is an exhortation to return to his normal state, and as the night is on the wane and the dawn is about to brighten the world with a new dispensation of boundless joy and freedom. Let's look at the poem, The Earth's Answer. This poem unfolds Earth's response to the call of the poet in the poem Introduction. She states that it's just not possible to rise so quickly. Blake feels that physical and spiritual love carries sublime power to redeem the earth from her icy bonds. All acts confined to the darkness of the night are to be performed openly in broad daylight. That alone ensures restoration of glory of the earth. Blake's use of intertextuality in describing the plight of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden after disobeying God's command elevates the poem. The earth squarely blames mankind for her plight and declares that the onus rests on them to redeem her with free love, breaking fetters of jealousy. This poem, The Tiger, is immensely popular among all generations of people through centuries. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. Everyone will be able to recollect and recite with enthusiasm. Well, in this poem, we find the tiger being used or employed by the poet in a symbolic manner. This poem explicates awesome power of the Creator to visualize and create the tiger, an unimaginably ferocious and powerful creature. It's the same God who created gentle lamb too. William Blake employs terms and refers to the tools related to the smithy to forge the tiger and unleash terror as the animal's heart starts beating. There is a parallel to the biblical figure of Job, who too had to encounter the awe and power of God. A series of rhetorical questions are asked, as in this poem, to prove that human wisdom, with its limitations, cannot comprehend God's awesome power and ability. Even the arrogant stars throw down their steely spears and water the sky with their tears. I quote, at the end of the poem, the poet says, "Did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee?" Blake wants to know, did the Creator smile after the tiger started breathing? Then the last line unravels the mystery of creation associated with the concept of tiger. There is equal space for the meek as well as the mighty in this world, in God's creation. Here, this point or this aspect serves as the key to understand this poem. It's pertinent to recall what Professor C.D. Narasimhaiah talks about this poem. He feels that the tiger is a Udbhava Murti, that which sprang to life. Then an Utsava Murti, idols taken in a procession during temple rituals. He feels that this is what makes this poem specially significant among all the poems written by English poets. And there's a reference also to the manner in which God manifests himself to end violence, dictatorship, and suffering of the meek at the hands of the tyrants. One may recall the Narasimhavatara, how Lord manifests himself as Narasimha to kill Hiranyakashipu, the demon, who subjected his people to unmitigated suffering and misery. That's how God chooses to protect the meek and the faithful, taking on some form or the other from time to time. The human abstract. In this poem, Blake asserts in this poem that human reason and abstract thinking prove to be harmful to the four virtues praised in the poem, as they demand suffering. The tree of mystery of religion grows nurtured by tears born of holy fears. The caterpillar, in quotes, and the fly are symbols which devour, hampering growth of the tree. The clergy are represented by the two destroyers. The fruit of the tree is deceit, and raven, an omen of death, dwells on the tree. As the human brain allows the tree to grow, it's impossible even for gods to locate it to encourage religious experience. In Norse mythology, Odin hanged himself on the world tree Yggdrasil in search of knowledge of the runes. The fruit of deceit is an allusion to the forbidden fruit of Garden of Eden, and also one that offers knowledge to runes, which helps in unraveling the mystery of nature. Raven represents death as well as Odin. Gods search for the Whistler that killed one of their gods in vain, and the search proves to be futile because the lethal element grows in human mind. Holy Thursday. In this poem, Blake ventilates his scorn for the indifference shown to the poverty-stricken children of London. He feels that where children are loved and treated well, the land prospers. Religious hypocrisy of the institutions in contemporary England pain the poet immensely. Expressions like eternal, bare, bleak suggest the squalor and hungry amidst which the hungry, unfortunate children of London live. Blake's castigation of the church, London city, and poverty and squalor amidst which the children are forced to live is unpalpably perceived in this poem. The concluding stanza of the poem gives account of the conditions which make a happy society for children to live in. William Blake prays for a state where hunger is unknown, where there is plenitude of joy on account of favorable conditions in nature and society. A happy child augurs well for any society. Suffering and starvation are indications of the doomsday. These lines remind the reader of the poem written by Rabindranath Tagore titled Where the Mind is Without Fear. To sum up, the work of William Blake, especially seen in these two volumes, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, one may say that he employs simple expressions at times, complex symbols at times, but epigrammatic expression makes his poems all the more enjoyable. Symbols are there, simple, at times difficult to decipher. Symbol of the lamb, the child, the shepherd definitely point to the Bible and the symbolic significance of these concepts. The poet is aware of the indifference of Londoners and the clergymen to the unfortunate children of London, and he castigates them without any hesitation, quite emphatically, in most of his poems. And he doesn't mind to repeat the reader that the joy of childhood can be regained by being faithful to the Creator, by being in love with divinity in man, perceivable all around in this world.